guest with us today.
Great. Well, thank you for joining, everyone, and thanks PMD Alliance for hosting. And we continue to be physically distanced but socially connected here and virtually connected through this Zoom platform that we've gotten to know so many of our fellow friends and patients and colleagues all over the world through these platforms. So just really excited to connect. And today we have two more PD Avengers with their superpowers. And it's just been a magical experience to learn about their stories. For me, I have said that I've been blown away, but it's true. Every time I pull up one of their websites or one of the fundraising things that they're doing for their own missions back home, what be it in Canada or Ireland or the UK or Africa, wherever it is, they are just kicking some arse, I think is the word that Gary taught me. I am actually well aware of that word because I'm Canadian, but yes, we're really, lighting some fires and making a difference here. So excited to bring two more of the Avengers, and they have a lot of great information to share. We have Gary Shaughnessy, who is from the UK. He's from the Parkinson UK. He has a major board member status there, and he's just doing a ton of amazing things out in the UK, connecting people, doing some fundraising events. He's very physically active. As you'll see, we're going to show you a video in a minute about him. And then we have Hugh Johnston, who joins us from I think the Toronto area, and as you know, I'm a fellow Canadian. I grew up in Canada, in Hamilton, so not too far from there. My parents are hanging out on a couch trying to stay safe there, and I miss them so every time we have a Canadian, I just love it. And so Hugh is chair of the board of Toronto Western's, which is the main neurology hospital in Toronto. The Toronto Western Hospital's Parkinson's disease integrated care
advisory board. Yeah.
The advisory board, okay, there. So he is making differences on a very practical level for patients in the Canada area as well. So we'll learn about what each of them is doing, and maybe we'll start by Gary. You want to tell us a little bit about, or should we show the video first? What do you think?
I think show the video.
Okay.
I can say it better than I do, so. I just want to say a big thank you to everyone who's come out this morning to join me, both those who are supporting and those who are cycling. I have to admit to being a bit nervous this morning. 11 days feels a long way, and the weather's great for it though, and it's great to be able to support the Foundation, Zurich Community Trust and Parkinson's UK, and I'm kind of looking forward to it, but in a strange way.
I've had the pleasure of knowing Gary both as CEO of EMEA and in his current role as chair of the Z Zurich Foundation. Gary is an example and role model for all of us. He's one for me, for sure. He has taken his qualities as an inspirational business leader and is using them to make a huge difference. As well as his leadership on the foundation, Gary is undertaking a number of challenges, including this one, but also 6 marathons, tandem hang gliding in Queenstown, a test from the Tour de France, and the Engadine vertical summer laugh and abseiling.
I'm very proud to be part of an organisation that helps support so many people in contributing to the society we have today, contributing to our communities. I'd also like to thank so many of you though who give up your time, give up so much of your skills and your resources to help support those who are less fortunate than ourselves. We've got a starting order as well. Yippee! Right, we ready, guys?
3, 2, 1. The neutralized start.
I mean, it really has been an absolutely wonderful experience. I'm absolutely shattered, but the friendship, the way that people have supported me, people have come out and cycled with me along the way, the goodwill has been tremendous. And we've raised a huge amount for Parkinson's UK, for the Zurich Z Foundation, and for ZCT as well. So it's been something that's really memorable, and it's very difficult to put into words, but I've just loved it.
Well, I'm sure I can speak for everyone at Parkinson's UK, Z Zurich Foundation and Zurich Community Trust to say thank you so much for everything you've done.
Thank you very much, Steve.
Thank you, Gary.
Wow, that's amazing. So tell us a little bit, Gary, about your journey. You know, when you had your diagnosis made, and a little bit about how you've gotten kind of to where you are right now with all of this.
Well, I mean, that's a great memory for me. That I was diagnosed 6 years ago, and to be honest, I knew nothing about Parkinson's whatsoever, and I wish I still knew nothing about Parkinson's, but obviously I've learned a lot over the last 6 years. On the positive side, it really sorted me out in a number of ways. I like a lot of executives in big corporates, you get very focused on yourself and what you're doing, and less focused on your family, your friends, and what I've done over the last 6 years is get myself a lot fitter, spend more time with the family. I first got promoted and then went into semi-retirement, so I've been through quite a wide range in that 6 years. And I have met so many brilliant people in the Parkinson's community, you know, so many people who I've learned an enormous amount from over the last 6 years. And you know, that's very special to me. But if I could have done it without the Parkinson's, that would be a much better answer.
Well, that's amazing. And you're just, have you always been this active, or do you think that you've sort of poured yourself into more athletic pursuits due to, you know, the Parkinson's and the fundraising stuff?
I was well, I should say soccer player, shouldn't I? I would say football, but I was a soccer player. I played semi-pro in the UK, and I don't know whether it was relevant, but I broke my nose and I had so many head injuries. You never know whether that was related to my Parkinson's. But I wasn't really a runner in the same way. And what I find is when I go running, I don't feel my Parkinson's. So, you know, other than that, if I'm walking around, it's always with me. If I'm running or cycling or swimming, for that matter, somehow I just don't feel it. And that makes a big difference.
That's amazing. Could you tell us a little bit about your Avengers journey and how you got to be part of them, and what and Hugh will also tell us a little bit about his.
Yeah, I mean, I was already, one of the things that strikes me, and in a sense, we'll cover that in the presentation, but I'll do it now anyway, is, you know, we talk about the fact that we need to have a voice, and I was struck by the fact that Parkinson's people are just so quiet, you know, and I didn't know about Parkinson's before I had it. I didn't hear a lot about it, and the energy and the kind of, I mean, when I was first diagnosed, a friend knew someone senior in a pharma company, and they said, oh yeah, we'll have a cure in 5 years. Well, it's 6 years and we haven't got a cure, and we've been saying we'll have a cure in 5 years for probably 25, 30 years. And that's what got me involved with Paul Mayhew Archer and Sally Bromley. And then we connected into Larry Gifford and, you know, heard the same issues. You know, how do we actually get this whole community behind sort of really getting sorted out and getting some urgency here?
Wow, well, that's great. And so what is out of the missions of the PD Avengers, and there's a number of them, what's your focused mission, or what's your favorite one?
Well, my focus is all about getting a million voices. If we're loud enough, we'll get stuff done. You know, you look at COVID-19, people are loud enough, and it's amazing how much effort's being put into to sort out a vaccine. Well, you know, that's a clearly humongous global issue. but there are 50 million people who are affected by Parkinson's in this world at the moment. That's nearly the population of the UK. It's 1.5 times the population of Canada. We need to get loud about it.
Yeah, as a doctor who takes care of you and is also trying to get the word out about needs for resources, I think that that's absolutely the case. And we do tend to be kind of a quiet population. We just sort of don't rally around as much as we should. And, you know, cancer and heart disease and HIV get much more of the stage. So I'm really excited to help you guys spread the word. Okay, well, Hugh, you're not off the hook there, my fellow.
Okay.
Tell me a little bit about your background and journey. We're going to hear a slide presentation from you both in a few minutes, and also a little bit about some of the work that you're doing. But you're really trying to educate, empower people. You're doing some webinars, even to teach postdocs about, you know, what matters to Parkinson's patients, and trying to reframe some of this a little bit. So tell me a little bit about your journey from diagnosis to where you are, you know, now with some of the stuff that you're doing back in Canada, but then also your journey into the Avengers universe.
Yep. Okay, real quick. I was on a sailboat for 300 miles around Lake Ontario in one race, and the boat dropped 10 feet in 1 second, and I went airborne and cracked my head. And shortly thereafter, my legs started shaking.
Wow.
And so after a couple of years, I had a neurology appointment, and the doctor told me I had Parkinson's, and then he retired a week later. So that was the end of my care for Parkinson's. Anyway, eventually I kind of figured it out, and I got a great doc now, and I reached out to some of the Avengers founders, Ben Stetcher and Sonia Mature, and met them. And just based on what I did for a living, I'm the fact guy. I just look at the facts and I'll show you, look, I'll show you what it is. So my passion for this is very much around, people don't seem to think that Parkinson's matters enough to do anything about it that actually works. We've been working hard on it, and we've got lots of ideas, and we're working on lots of things, but we got very poor results in terms of disease modifying treatments. And so I'd like to show people, you know, why does Parkinson's matter so much? And so we'll get there in the presentation.
Great. Well, I will let you guys present your stuff, and then we'll talk a little bit more.
Right. Let's.
Okay, so I'll share the screen, Gary.
Okay. Thanks, Hugh.
Hopefully everyone can see that.
We've started on this one already. I mean, if I go back to my point about the fact that 6 years ago, I met someone from a senior ranking member of a pharma company who said 5 years, and I think we've all had that. Now, the reality is, all I've heard, you know, continually is everyone has their own different journey. But one part of the journey that seems to be consistent is that a lot of people basically go into despair, as I did when I was first diagnosed. Then they identify that they want to fight this thing and they don't want to be defined by it. And for a period of time, they push against it, they make a noise, and they make the noise loudly individually. And then, as I got from a leading member of the Parkinson's community in the UK on Saturday, that, you know, they just go back over the edge, and we start talking about, well, not in my lifetime. We're not going to sort this in my lifetime. And it feels to me we have to break that cycle, because as long as we consider this as something that we can't solve in our lifetime, then we won't solve it, because we're always looking way too far out. We've got to have the urgency behind it. Someone in this chat, I noticed, just said, what exactly are we trying to avenge, the condition? For me, this is all about actually making the world a place where you don't have to fear Parkinson's, and that we end Parkinson's. Whether that's a cure, whether that's something that manages it, but we end the fear of Parkinson's. Next slide, please, Hugh. There are about 10 million across the world. The interesting thing about this is, it's a couple of years out of date, but you can see that the red is areas where higher proportions of people who have Parkinson's. The blue is lower proportions. I think 10 million is an underestimate, because the reason that Africa is below and isn't red is probably more to do with under diagnosis than anything else. Next slide, please. But when we talk about 10 million, we really mean 50. I mean, the reality is, when I look at Parkinson's UK, half our members are carers. More than half the people who contact our service support lines are carers or friends and family. And here's a good example of Sonia and her family. Living with someone who's with Parkinson's is a sentence in its own right, and it's a challenge in its own right. So there are 50 million at least affected by Parkinson's. Slide, please. And the mainstream, I mean, everyone's used to this, but the mainstream medication has been there for 50 years. We've had some progress, but in terms of medication that most people can access, and I'll come back to most people, but it's 50 years old.
Yeah, and we've had lots of great bits of progress, but yet still we do not have a disease-modifying treatment. And every single trial that's happened in the last 20 years, every one of them has failed.
Next slide, please, Hugh.
Yep.
And we're in the situation where there are millions of people on this planet who, despite the fact that the medication is 50 years old, despite the fact that many of the principles of support services aren't around medication, they're around diet and exercise, despite that, millions of people don't have any access to those support services and medication at all. I mean, that for me is a fundamental problem that we can't, we seem to just hide from.
Yeah, and in the Western society, we have dopamine agonists, we have all sorts of treatments and rescue medications, and we have rock steady boxing and all this stuff. The people in many of these countries can't even afford 3 levodopa a day.
But if you're rich, it doesn't mean that you can avoid it. And this is a condition that, you know, I didn't know anything about before I got diagnosed. A lot of people don't know anything about, and yet they could be the next in line. And you can improve the quality of the treatment that you get, but you can't at the moment stop yourself getting it.
And it doesn't really run in families. Frankly, they've only associated some 10% of Parkinson's cases with risk factors for genomes, but very few of them are causal, and it's less than 1 to 2%. And so therefore, it could be you, it could be your wife, it could be your husband, it could be your son, daughter, grandmother, mother, father, it could be anybody.
And so the message really from our point of view is, I think we've got to move away from this idea of 1 or 2 or 10 people who allowed and then become focused on the next generation because they despair. And we've got to get a group where we're talking about 1 million people making the same noise consistently, being intolerant of situations where people don't have access to these medications, being intolerant of situations where things like paraquat are available and used on an ongoing basis, despite some of the indications that go behind them. And we just got to make sure that when one person stands down, the next person stands up. So it's not really a,
you know, Gary,
message.
You know, Gary, when I first started out, I told people, and this was true, is I thought, hey, these people run out of gas and somebody needs to pick the torch up. So I'll pick the torch up and run it down the field until the next person needs it. I'm getting a little fed up. I don't think I want to hand the torch over. I think I want some results before it's my time.
And that's it. Simple message. We just need everyone to sign up and get on board.
Well, so what, Gary, what does it mean signing up? What do you have to do? Do you have to give money? What do you do?
This is no money. This is all about the voice. So basically what we're trying to do is give people with Parkinson's or living with Parkinson's a voice. So go to the website, and basically make the commitment that you will back and support the voice of people with Parkinson's. There's no cash.
Yeah, so we don't want any money, right? There's lots of people that need money. We don't need money. We just need your voice to prove that Parkinson's matters, to create a real sense of urgency to end this thing, right?
Absolutely.
That's amazing. So do you guys, I think should we unshare this slide? Or well, actually, you know what, before we, Hugh, because you have another presentation, do you want to just go ahead and segue into that maybe? And then we can talk a little bit more about this, because then we can just sort of not share the slides anymore and we'll just see your face.
And we can have the dialogue. This one's good because it actually is part about why Parkinson's matters. Can people see my screen?
Not yet. We see your
Maybe
face.
not yet. Not yet. I need to do a new screen share. Okay. Can everybody see that?
Yep.
Yeah. So there's lots of things we say. I clipped all these off of all the various websites. People get Parkinson's pretty young. You're not going to die with it. You're going to die from it and all that good stuff. And so, you know, you get 12 and a half years to live. Frankly, Gary, I don't think that would be a very good deal for you and I. And the good news is that the younger onsets, which we are, have a longer runway. But if you look at this, it's basically, some people are telling you the age to develop at 60 and you get 13 years. What's going on? That doesn't sound very good. Well, perhaps some of the data is a little bit old. There's this guy, Hans Rosling from Sweden, and his big thing was showing people that what they learned when they were in school sometimes changes. And if it isn't in your wheelhouse and right in front of your face every day, you're going to not notice that things have changed. And the example he gives is natural disasters. Are they better or worse? People in Sweden, very few of them got the right answer, which was they're better. Chimps did better than the people on the TED talk. So if you go back to the 1950s and 60s, Hohen and Yahr, anybody know that name, Hohen and Yahr? It's a scale, right? The average age of onset was 55 years old for Parkinson's disease. Wow. But then if you look it up, the average age of mortality for a male was 66. People forget that. And so what we learned when we were younger may not be true. So by the 1990s, the facts were a little closer than they are to what the truth and the reality is today. By the mid-90s, the data was saying the average age of incidence was around 70 years old. Now notice a lot of those charity websites, they still have 60, 64, 65 on their website, even Parkinson's Canada. So what's up with that? Well, by about 5 years ago in Canada, the prevalence, the highest incidence actually when you're really old, when you're 75 to 79, 80, 84, and 85 plus. What's up with that? And in the UK, hey, look at this. It's the exact same thing, 75 to 79. And that's when the incidence happens. Newly diagnosed, that's when it happens, when you're 75 to 84. What happened to Hohen and Yahr is 55. And when you go to Germany, Canada, UK, Sweden, Netherlands, US, they're all pretty much the same. So why does everybody seem to think that this thing happens so early when perhaps it doesn't? The number of cases on young onsets are a little bit on the short side, but the cases on the older side are also a bit on the short side because frankly, a lot of people get Parkinson's disease, but they never get diagnosed and they just think it's getting old. You're a little slow, you're stooped over, all that good stuff. You know what? You're getting old. So prevalence in Canada, it's primarily a disease of the old. Young onsets like Gary and I and the PD Avengers are pretty rare actually in the grand scheme of things. But remember, Hohen and Yahr did a study in the 50s and 60s. The average age of onset way back then when people died by age 67, 68 was 55. Now it's much better. So we look at the UK and the prevalence, again, of the young ones, by the time you're 50, 54, wow, not very many, right? It builds and builds and builds. So what's the scoop? Well, here's the scoop. Look at this graph here. But 1960, boy, people lived 12 to 13 years less than they do today. And I showed you those age of incidence. People get the disease when they're older. So as people got older, they got more Parkinson's. Now, does anybody live in a country where there's the big baby boom? The oldest boomer's 74. If the average age of onset's 75, we're going to get hammered by Parkinson's patients in the next 10 years. So the older you get, the higher your odds for PD. This is the doctor's study in the US. These are doctors. They kind of know whether they've got Parkinson's or not. Their average age of lifespan over a long longitudinal study was 89 years. And the raw incidence was almost 10%. 6.7% of those doctors got Parkinson's disease in their lifetime. This thing is way more prevalent than we think it is. And if we say you won't die from Parkinson's, you'll die with it, well, sometimes that's because you were pretty old when you got it. You were 75 on average, and the average lifespan's only 5 years from there. But wait a minute, if the average age is 75 and you get 13 years, that's like 87, 88. So this is turned into very much a disease of older people in developed countries. Will I die from Parkinson's disease? So I don't know if you know what these graphs are, but they're hazard ratios. And there's a line down the middle, which means it's a coin flip, 50-50. Everything on side of the slide where all the blue dots are, that all means there's a hazard ratio that's bigger than a coin flip. Them are pretty damn big. You do die from Parkinson's. If you are under 49 years old and you get Parkinson's disease, your life expectancy is 71, not 81. If you're aged 49 to 64, 50 to 64, your life expectancy is an extra 2 years. You get to live till 73. So when everybody says you won't die of Parkinson's, you'll die with it, yeah, I don't think so. If you go to the Bill Gates data, here's a chart of Parkinson's disease deaths in the US. Look at the age groups, 80s and 85. Look at the number, 2K, 4K, 6K per year. Lots of people die from Parkinson's disease. This thing matters. It disables people. It disables families. It disables spouses. It takes people out of the workforce early. It matters. So, takeaways, average age, 75. YOPD, young onset, fairly young, and really the cutoff probably should be up around 60 or 65. The majority die earlier than they should have. But how can that be when people say, well, gee, the average Parkinson's patient dies older than the average member of the population? Well, that's because most of them don't. And why does it matter? It matters a lot. I've met so many people. I'm so lucky so far. It looks like my progression is going to be fairly slow, but I'm one of the lucky ones. What about the ones that are not like me? Anyway, calling to anyone and everyone to be a PD Avenger and prove to people that Parkinson's matters and it's worth it, creating a real sense of urgency to end the thing. Because frankly, it's been 50 years and I don't want to hand off the microphone to anybody. I want it done while I still have it. Indu?
Yeah, that's amazing. You know, I've been a Parkinson's doc for 20 years, and I don't think I've actually seen those graphs exactly like that. You know, I think a lot of us, you know, even when we're teaching medical students, when we're teaching residents, the fellows, we're still using those antiquated statistics. I think they need to unfortunately be revised.
And you know what, Indu? It's that fair. Like hands law oscillates. That's exactly what happens. People, people learn something when they're in school, and if it's not right in their face, you work in a movement disorder center, your patients usually aren't 85 years old, right? Because they don't come to you. You get the younger ones. So you see patients that confirm what you think.
Yeah. I run the Center of Excellence at the VA. So it's no day's the same. And it's, people say, well, how are you a Parkinson's doc? And all you see is Parkinson's disease all day long. And you still seem like a relatively happy person. I go into work and I try to fight the fight for our patients, but no one patient with Parkinson's is the same. And, we have patients who are in their 30s and in their 90s with Parkinson's. It's such a, all-encompassing kind of, no one is spared, as you pointed out, with some of those maps that you showed. And, we should all care about this as the population's aging. And honestly, there's, as this book, the Ending Parkinson's Disease book points out, there's a pandemic of Parkinson's disease. So not only are we dealing with the pandemic of COVID-19 right now, but we have this background of this pandemic of Parkinson's where cases have doubled in the last 30, 40 years, and they're going to double again by 2040. So, we are, as a healthcare system, as countries around the world, as people that care about each other, need to care about this disease. It's not something that is reducing, in its incidence or prevalence. We're definitely seeing more and more of it. So I think bringing attention to this as you are is really important. Gary, getting back to some of the things that you've been doing, I think I'd like to learn a little bit about what your role has been in the Parkinson UK and some of the things that you've been able to bring to, some of this fight with your business leader mind. Maybe you could teach us a little bit about that.
Okay, so I'm the chair of Parkinson's UK. But can I just make a point actually before I go about the chair? One of the problems here is the people who are loud about Parkinson's tend to be people who are relatively early diagnosed. So what you see is, if you don't have Parkinson's, is you see people who are fitter and don't necessarily have all the visible signs of Parkinson's. It doesn't mean they're not struggling with the condition. So actually one of our challenges here is, if we're loud and we seem in a reasonable state, then people kind of say, well, does it matter that much? And it does matter that much. So there's actually a thing about...
Yeah, Gary, we're our own worst enemy sometimes, right?
Correct. None of us like to say that we're not feeling good. None of us like to say that it's a problem. And there are, as you know, there are that many different ways of different issues around Parkinson's. It's not just a tremor. It's not just mobility. It's not just a sense of smell, etc., etc. But what have I done since I became chair of Parkinson's UK? I think for me, one of the big areas is supporting the voice of the person with Parkinson's. So we now have more than half our trustees are people with Parkinson's or a family member with Parkinson's. We've also got people who bring real expertise that we don't have. And a big part of our job is to make sure that there's an understanding. I mean, COVID-19 has been a real challenge, but lockdown for a lot of people with Parkinson's is incredibly challenging. It's challenging for everyone, but that sense of worry, that sense of anxiety, that's a real problem. And maybe people don't always recognize that about people with Parkinson's. My job, frankly, is to be a champion of people with Parkinson's and their issues. Not that I know all of them, because the fact is we're all different, and the business management side of it is just something that I can bring with it.
It's amazing. And tell us a little bit about some of the current things that you're doing as well in your own world there. I saw something about a 3-legged race that you're running, and a few other interesting things. And I'm also fascinated because I saw that you're chairing a panel on diversity and inclusion tomorrow. I saw that on some social media. So I think you're really trying to, poke around in many different aspects and make different changes in many different arenas, which I'm really excited to hear about.
Yeah, I mean, I also chair the Z Zurich Foundation, and one of our big focuses is on inclusion. And I think that's a a massive issue in not just in terms of some of the highly publicized areas, but also some of the ingrained issues around inclusion. When you look at, for example, the proportion of women in senior roles in the City of London, it's moved, but it's not moved anywhere near as quickly as you'd imagine it should do, for example. So I think that one of the important things for Parkinson's UK is to make sure we really represent the entirety of our community. So the debate it's actually next Tuesday, is all about how do you make sure that you represent the entire community, not just the community that has been used to being part of Parkinson's UK. And we have one of our speakers is from a group of charities, So White, and it's very interesting about the demographics of people who work for charities. And clearly what we want to do is embrace a much wider population and part of the society than we have done previously. Three-legged race, the behind that was really simple. Sometimes it can feel like you're being dragged around when you by someone else when you've got Parkinson's. Sometimes it feels like you're dragging other people around. I wanted to come up with something that was a world record that I had a chance of beating. I had no chance of beating Usain Bolt's 100-meter time. And not many people have done the three-legged race. The Brits have got a long tradition of this. Eddie the Eagle got into the Olympics because no one else in the UK at the time wanted to do the ski jump. No one else is doing the three-legged race, but at the same time as I'm trying to do 24 hours three-legged walking or running, I'm going to do 116 kilometers. We're inviting other people to do it virtually and do a minimum of 200 meters. We've got the youngest person we've got so far is 4, the oldest is 75. So, and in the 2 weeks prior to that, I'll be doing the London Marathon virtually and my first ultra. So, you know, while I've got the ability to do it, I'm going to try my best to, and I'm very fortunate to have been supported by lots of people.
Wow, that's really amazing. It's like, what are you not doing? And all of you are like this, all the Avengers. I'm really just blown away. So Hugh, back to you. So, you know, this type of webinar that you just put together, that was originally, I found that somewhere and I made you present that today, but that was for who exactly originally? And what is the purpose of teaching this, you know, group about this type of thing?
Well, that webinar was for the Cure Parkinson that works with Parkinson's UK, founded by Tom Isaacs, and the Van Andel Institute in Michigan, Grand Rapids, Michigan, in the U.S. And they put on a group of webinars for postdocs, and it's postdocs that are presenting in this. There's also some senior researchers who are presenting on career advice and things like that. But there's also the patient voice. And we're very involved, many of us, in trying to get the patient voice involved in research and clinical care and education in Parkinson's disease. Sometimes, if anybody's been in a research study for Parkinson's, sometimes you just scratch your head and wonder who wrote that in the protocol, and if they had just asked even 1 or 2 or 3 of us, they wouldn't have done it that way. So this is my effort. This is kind of what I did for a living. I was the kind of the fact-based guy, and so one of my passions is that young onset Parkinson's disease does really matter, because people really do have their lives terribly affected by it. One of the slides that I don't have in that deck is one that shows the difference between fast progression and slow progression Parkinson's disease. You know, if you think it's a bit of a difficult ride for the averaging Parkinson's patient, for some Parkinson's patients, and at my first conference, I met one of these people, this wonderful lady, and she was just something else, and she just got an MSA diagnosis. And so, I mean, that's, you know, that's like getting Lou Gehrig's. I mean, it's really bad. dementia Lewy bodies, that's perhaps worse. And so there are people who get really aggressive types of this disease. And I just feel inspired to do something to make sure that people don't forget what it's like for those people. And that, as Ben Stetcher says, Ben says, the pace of your research cannot keep up with the degeneration in my nervous system. We don't have enough time for folks to do research for research's sake. We need results. And that's partially what PD Avengers is all about.
Yeah.
It matters. We need more urgency. We can't have people doing papers where it takes 2 decades to figure out whether levodopa, which we've had for 50 years, is disease modifying or not. That just is not acceptable anymore.
So it sounds like there's a lot of things that are quite out of date. The chat here is talking about even the Wikipedia page, I guess, for Parkinson's, and checking that out. That there's drawings of old stooped men, representing this disease, and really that the sense is that if somebody's newly diagnosed and they see these things, that they could really kind of freak out. So I think it might be relatively low-hanging fruit to update some of these places that many patients are going to go, Google the diagnosis and these things pop up, and then, poke around in these sites that are really just completely out of date and possibly even misinformation. So I think that would be, helpful given your statistics as well that are just quite mind-opening. There's also been some things in the chat about, the fact that, Big Pharma hasn't really been looking into, really trying to cure this because it's not in their interests and things like that. And I think, people like Ben, who I know I see is on here as well, in the audience, who's done some remarkable, things to shake things up. It has really drawn some interest in sort of the current models of disease and what are we really doing. So, yeah, somebody writes the old stoop man pictures from 1885. So, and there's a lot of things that look like they're out of date. There's also been a worry about the declining number of movement disorders neurologists in the universe as well. So I think, there are a number of things that seem to be, problematic that definitely could be fixed. But I think, this type of forum where we can kind of talk openly about
Hi, what's up?
What are the issues and kind of go from there is really, really key to trying to make a difference. So 1880.
Yep, it's
right.
a long wait, sweet.
Okay, so maybe Gary, could you tell us a little bit more about this, how you're going to try to get some diversity going in some of these representation? Are you trying to actively seek these communities in ways that may not have been able to be sought out before? What's sort of the way that you're trying to build diversity to represent the full panel of patients out there?
Yeah, the first thing is what we're trying to do is talk and understand rather than just say, this is what we think the answer is. And we've got there are 340 branches, groups of Parkinson's UK in the UK, and some of them are extremely well set up and well run. Some of the new ways that we're working with people online or in Parkinson's cafes, etc., are giving us a completely different group of people who are engaging with us. But I think that the most important thing is listen, and the second most important thing is give ownership to the people who are in the community. So it's less about us telling people how they should engage with us and more about us listening to how people want to engage and then enabling that to happen. And we've done a lot of work on that, but the webinar next week, and there's another one in a couple of weeks after, is really about making sure that we get as many people's voices in the community as to what are the obstacles, what are the things in the way, and how can we resolve that.
Yeah, that's really important. Can you tell us about that Parkinson Cafe? I've never heard of that.
So instead of having a formal group that meets in a leisure centre or a church hall or whatever it happens to be, it's a much more informal meeting, so that you know that people are going to turn up at a particular place and just have a cup of coffee and have a chat. I mean, it's been, obviously lockdown has made that difficult, but what it has emphasized is how much connection really matters to people, you know, and you can use, I mean, a lot of the things that we support local groups with around, you know, dance, around exercise, etc. But the biggest thing that people come back again and again is connection, talking to other people who are not necessarily in the same position, but understand the challenges that people are going through.
Absolutely.
One thing I would like also add into is that for every person with Parkinson's, there's usually somebody else who's very close to them, and they are highly rated. In Parkinson's Canada, when you go and give a talk there, the people that come up after the session, there's as many, if not more, caregivers that come up, or spouses, or family members, or however they like to be described. And so Parkinson's doesn't just affect, as Gary said, the 10 million people we think are diagnosed with it today. It affects tens of millions.
Yeah, there's also been some chat here about how do we even know what the accuracy of these stats are. I mean, I know as a Parkinson's doc who works in the VA system that there's a huge delay in making diagnoses often in many populations. And a lot of what I do is actually, because there are a shortage, you know, we have 6 centers of excellence in the country and probably, you know, really a couple of handfuls of movement disorder trained neurologists for, you know, a nation full of veterans with huge needs that are underserved. And so what we are trying to do is really teach neurologists and teach whoever will listen to us, honestly, geriatricians, palliative care doctors, whoever will listen to us, literally. The number of lectures that we are harassing people to attend and, you know, trying to get out there is really, you know, valuable, I think, to us, and, you know, just trying to have people understand about our populations. And there's so much misinformation out there that you have to have a tremor in order to get the diagnosis, that it only happens to older people, that, you know, it's a disease of that bent, stooped old man, you know, and it couldn't happen to, you know, someone like Sonia, who was in her late 20s, you know, who's this beautiful woman, you know.
Yeah.
So it's really, they're just dispelling these myths and having people open their minds. But I think that if we really started going bedside to bedside in some, you know, long-term care facilities or room to room or house to house or whatever, I think we'd see that really it's a very common disease that's only getting more common, and that we need to really be, you know, casting a much wider net to really, you know, find the true numbers so that we can really advocate for the resources that we need.
Yeah, I think 10 million.
Gary.
No, I was just saying 10 million's an
Go ahead.
underestimate and 50 million's an underestimate. Now, you know, if it's that kind of number,
Yep.
whether it's 10.2 million or 11.3, I don't know, it's a big number, and you wouldn't imagine it from the noise that we make. That for me is I keep coming back to it.
The key component. The number that I find that is probably the best one I found so far, and you got to do a lot of digging, is the one from the doctor's study. You got 20,000 medical physicians that probably have the best probability of having a reasonably good diagnosis, and it's as of age 89 that they lived. And so even some of them were misdiagnosed, believe it or not. But at the end of the day, 0.6% of the population that reaches that age, many die before that, but it's a very, very big number. And 10 million doesn't reflect that number in any way, shape, or form. So how accurate are the statistics? Countries like the UK and Canada, where there's a single electronic medical record, probably have a better handle on things. In the US, you can correlate Parkinson's incidence and prevalence numbers with income and access to healthcare, and also with demographic. The African American population apparently don't show up until Hohenjahr 2.5 on average, because they see the early signs of Parkinson's as normal aging. It's cultural reasons why the data is not right. Interestingly, in Asia, in Japan and Korea, if you look at the numbers of incidence and prevalence, there's more women than men, but then if you look at the death numbers, it's the other way around. The men are too ashamed, perhaps. And so there's lots of reasons why the data could be wrong.
I think just, global education for everyone on the planet so that they understand what the signs and symptoms could be, and, getting good education out there is really important. And it's important to, everyone globally. So for sure. So this hour has almost flown by. We have 8 minutes left. I wanted to make sure that I understood, because I know that both of you look amazing on this call. I want to get a sense of the secret sauce for each of you that helps you the most, you think, with your doing well with Parkinson's, living well with Parkinson's. Maybe Gary first.
Oh, secret sauce. I'm not sure. Filters on Zoom cameras work quite well for me. But I mean, for me, I take medication, but exercise makes a difference. If I don't exercise, I can feel that. 2 days on the trot, no exercise, and my tremor will be a lot worse.
Okay, so exercise is medicine for you. And how about you, Hugh?
I take it in terms of something Ben and I call, or Ben calls, the brain gym. And it's exercise, it's good sleep hygiene, it's eating well, it's taking time to be with good people and having social connection. It's doing mindfulness and relaxation techniques. I personally use autogenic relaxation sometimes, which is a technique you use for pain relief. And so I fundamentally believe that many of these symptoms, although they can't be cured, they can be rehabbed. It is a partially rehabable condition. And in Toronto Western Hospital in Toronto, we have a research study that's just beginning that is going to do an integrated care model around that. And then one of your guests, Alfonso Fasano, from a couple of weeks ago, Alfonso has this gait lab where he actually put me on a split belt treadmill, and he retrained my short step on this treadmill, and it evened up my gait again. And I walked faster and more evenly. And so you can actually retrain some of this stuff.
That's great. Well, you're in the right place in Canada for sure. I trained there in med school, and some great people for sure. So you're also influencing how things happen there, which is great. It's really, I think it's important to have the patient voice in all of these layers. I really think that we cannot get anywhere without having patients involved at every level, from research to education to policy making, advocacy. So I really commend you guys for all that you're doing. And it's as if I've paid you guys to sort of tout the importance of social connection. I and Lori Mishley and some colleagues just presented an abstract that was highlighted at the Movement Disorders meeting, and we have a paper coming out just on that specific issue on social connection, and it's gotten some media attention. And it's as bad for you to be lonely with Parkinson's as if you the benefits of exercising 7 days a week every day for 30 minutes is good for you. So this is a huge important thing that I think is so important to realize in every community out there, that we really haven't done a good job of trying to connect people. And I will say that from a diversity and trying to connect people perspective, using virtual medium is amazing, which is why we have this. But there are people that are not, either can't afford, a computer, aren't able to connect because of, not being able to tech savvy, don't have bandwidth or live remote, so many of these countries in Africa that we're trying to help, and other places, just really trying to get easy, simple ways to educate even outside of this, medium, I think is important. And from a diversity perspective, trying to seek these communities out in ways where we're not necessarily getting just through internet would be my vote as well. If you can use phone calls or flyers or something, or even door-to-door, advocacy. We cannot be forgetting those people that can't connect with us through this medium.
We had this discussion at the patient advisory board at our last meeting. Karen Lee was there, our new CEO of Parkinson's Canada, and she confirmed what we found, which was shockingly over 50% of the patients don't even have an email. And so how do you reach half of the population, even in a developed country, let alone one that's not developed?
Yeah, yeah.
Gary?
Yeah, I was going to say, I mean, I think it's also this whole issue about how do you make sure you connect with people in a way that works from them. I mean, exercise works for me, but a lady called Jan Sargent in the UK, last time I painted was at school when I was forced to do so in order for my O levels, and she runs art classes and persuaded me to turn up to this. And it's, you know, stretching people in lots of different ways makes a difference, and that woman is absolutely inspirational. My painting was awful, but she's inspirational.
Absolutely. So maybe just a couple minutes of a take-home message. We've heard a lot of great, you know, pearls here, you know, stretching can help, maybe trying some art even when that wasn't your thing. I can attest to the lack of artistic ability myself, but, you know, it is kind of fun just to get together with people and try it. So, so maybe we'll just hear a minute or two since we've almost out of time, and we'll definitely link all of your great resources and the things that you're each participating in. And I think it would be great to have more diversity conversations, which we'll be having more, you know, we'll be having some folks talking about these specific issues from a provider level in October with this series. So stay tuned for that. So yeah, tell me maybe just a final, you know, message of hope and wrap up here, Gary, and then we'll let you as well.
I'd just say, I mean, for me, Parkinson's matters, what we're doing matters, and there will be a solution. But if it doesn't matter enough for us to talk loudly about it and to create a million voices, then we probably don't deserve to get the solution. So there is an opportunity. And I think if we put our minds together and our voices together, we're going to get to that solution a damn sight quicker.
Hugh?
Great. We need your voice. We need you, we need your family members, we need your children, we need your brothers, we need your sisters, we need people to put their name down, to be PD Avengers. We don't need anybody's money, we just need your support to prove to people that this disease matters, that it has an impact on you and your families, and that it's something that's worth creating a much more significant sense of urgency around. PDAvengers.com, right off the bat, it asks you to sign up. We don't want anything other than your voice. We need your voice. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you guys for joining me. It's been a sheer pleasure. Thanks for all the work that you're doing. I really, you know, continue to be blown away by each and every one of you, and we'll have another group of Avengers coming on in the next few weeks. And there's been a lot of questions about Africa and some of these other sorts of unmet needs. We'll be focusing more on those conversations. So stay tuned. And for those of you out there that are, you know, in virtual support group land, this will be on video. And so you can forward it to everybody who cares about you. Forward the links. You know, we really just need to get the word out. So these are available to watch on basically YouTube. So anyone who's able to watch, we can, you know, share the links. And I think the only way to really make a difference is for people to understand that there is an urgency, that we all need to light a fire under our arses and get out there and really make a difference and work together, honestly, not just patients, not just people who care about patients, not just you know, doctors, but literally every single one of us on this planet. Because I think, you know, it is it's an increasingly common disease that, like they said, it could affect anyone. And most people, when I give these talks and I ask in the room, even if it's my medical students, even if it's, you know, to anyone who will listen, I say, who in the room knows somebody who has Parkinson's or cares deeply about somebody who has Parkinson's? And literally every hand is up in the room. So it's just so common. So we really need to fight together to end it. All right. So thank you guys for your attention. And I will pass it back to you, Anissa, for the goodbye wave.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Gary and Hugh, Dr. Subramanian. And you guys mentioned the whole family being impacted. So next Monday, there's another Avengers episode about the whole family. So join us for that. In the meantime, let's say goodbye to everybody and do our wave. Thank you so much for joining us. We look forward to seeing you again. Thank you. Have a great Monday.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.